matchups. Our first matchup of the day, two somewhat underdog players considering some of the incredible talent on display in this division. And the matchup is Jason Ubeika versus Sam Anikoh.
We'll see some great Scrabble action very soon.
I think our first matchup of the game between Jason and Sam is getting set to begin. You can see they're seated, having a little banter, getting ready to play. And it's at this point where, you're just looking to be in the mix. Like I said, Austin, anybody that's close to the top at this point can make a run towards the top of the standings.
Yeah, definitely. As we know, as we saw, I'm going to tell you right now that Jason Keller's on 10-1. And you can see that Jason is 7-4, and you got Samuel who's at 5-6. But we know that both of these are actually very strong players. So again, anyone that can make a run will always have a shot, and obviously can make a shot towards the top four. So plenty of time to make it.
So we begin this round 12 matchup here with Jason going first. It looks like he's drawn a few too many vowels, but I think he should find himself able to play something here to start the game off. And it looks like he's quickly assembling, Austin, what I think is a pretty good play.
Yeah, I think so. You're looking to get rid of those A's and E's. And I think this is really the only, probably the highest scoring player that he's got. So he's keeping 2 E's, which is not the greatest, but it's probably the best thing he can do right now. And looks like Samuel has not drawn too much better with what he's got. So interesting to see what he can do here.
Two kind of subpar racks. Jason with too many vowels. Samuel with too many duplicated letters that you don't love to see. That I-R-R combination is very unwieldy. So he's going to be looking to whatever he does here. It looks like he might be getting ready to play Uri to the E of Pian, if that's how he's set his tiles up here. Might have some higher scoring options than that, but frankly, that isn't even that bad, which tells you how subpar his rack actually is.
Yeah, I mean, this only scores 7 points. It looks like he's looking to put it on the board right now. He's grab. Oh, it looks like he's playing Pori, which actually is not a word. He's getting it mixed up with Pori with 2 I's, 2 O's, or Auri, Houri. So.
And I saw Jason's mouth just say hold. I just saw him mouth that word. So he is going to challenge. You can see his clock under Jason's portrait was just neutralized, and both clocks neutralized. That means the players are going to get up and assess the validity of this word. And Austin, as you said, this word looks close to a couple other words in the dictionary, but this one happens to not be in there. So a tough start for Samuel. He's going to get this word challenged off.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not the start that you would really want. And of course, he's going to get these tiles back as well. So he's still going to be stuck with some kind of bad tiles. But unseen to him, Jason doesn't have particularly good tiles still either, so he shouldn't really be too much further behind once this is coming off the board. As you can see there right now, that Samuel is taking his tiles off the board.
Yeah, there are challenges and there are challenges, right? There are some times where you make a play with pretty good letters that happens to be a phony word. Sometimes you can not be damaged that much by losing a challenge in those situations because you're pretty likely to have a good option on your next turn. But for Samuel here, his letters are so subpar that he's going to be forced into another really uninspiring situation on his next turn, though at least now he has hooks to vague that he can take advantage of.
Yeah, so vague was an option there. I mean, I was thinking maybe Give as well, which would have been a little bit better. At least we know that he might not. Well, actually, we didn't know. Well, we can see that he has a D, but Jason wouldn't know that. So the Give, we would make Give as well. But vague, we know that Simon just played an R, so that actually might have been. I'm not sure that's any good because he would have given him a place to play his R. But like he's playing Dow right now, which at least gives him a decent number of points on this turn. So yeah, I don't know. He played that very quickly though.
He did, and the big the downside of this play, there is no play for Sam that's going to score anything that high here, and he's going to pick it up because I think he was balking at the fact that he was keeping 2 eyes left over on his rack. I think he's likely, and there we do see him pick his play up of Dower and play the more obscure Rorid, which is going to score a couple more points, and it's going to use up one of those 2 eyes at a cost of leaving just 2 vowels on his rack. So there's pretty much almost no way in his shoes to avoid some kind of negative outcome of his play here. That in part, that's because his rack was very weak. But I think maybe the best option for him there would have been Rudi, R-U-D-I, with vagued. But then again, vagued is not really a very normal hook. He might not have known that to be a word there. So in fact, playing Rorid in that spot instead of with the D as the hook suggests maybe he didn't know the D hook on vague. So I don't know. Tough one, Austin. Sometimes there's just really no play that makes you feel very good.
Yeah, I mean, again, just having those letters back for a second time just means that he has to go through it again, keeping the U and the I. I mean, again, it looks like he's actually not drawn too badly on this one, but yeah, it was not an easy decision to make. But as we move on to Jason's rack, he's only 16 ahead with this turn in now. Just wondering what he can do.
Look at that! Look at what Samuel has spelled out.
Yeah, he found it too. Yeah, managed to draw into that.
Very, very impressive. So the question from here, though, is that N going to stay open? So you can see that Sam Anikoh has lined up the amazing possible bingo that does fit on this board of sub-index through the N of Pian. Is Jason going to manage to block that? He does have some plays potentially, forming that Y. It looks like he may be getting set to play Yin on top of Pian, forming Ya. That would effectively block the bingo here. So, sub-index would technically still be playable, but not as a bingo through IN, which dramatically decreases the value of that play. So, wow, just in the nick of time, Austin, he blocks it.
Yeah, definitely. Yin, only scores 22 points. He could have played Yike in that same spot, which would have scored a lot more. But yeah, it was a timely block, unbeknownst to him.
Yeah, there were definitely other spots on the board where he could have played there. There were some words through that first R of Rorid that might have been worthwhile to play, but sometimes you just have to. That is an underrated way that luck can manifest itself, as we see Sam play ducks on top of Yin, just played by Jason there. Nice re-overlap by him. But there are times, Austin, where you can make the wrong play, quote unquote, but be rewarded for it because your opponent just happened to have an amazing play in that spot.
Yeah, and that might actually be happening right now, in fact. Jason might feel a little bit ill with this next rack. He's got the word stickins on his rack here, which I would expect him to see. It's actually the only 7-letter word here. But I think he has maybe 2 spots for it. So underneath din, so dins, and then he has underneath rorit, the I and the D, which I think scores a little bit more. So 75 points underneath the I and the D, which is 5 points more than the other spot underneath din. So looks like there's just really 2 spaces for him to play there, and there's no 8-letter words either. So there's the only 2 playable bingo spots here.
It does seem like it's just a question of, is he going to see it? I fully expect him to, and now we get our confirmation that he has seen it. He puts his letters into order, and he is making the best play here, the better of the 2 bingos, scoring 5 more points than it would hooking to dins. Nicely done, nicely spotted by Jason. And you can see over on Sam's rack, he has Zimbies set up with the E. That isn't valid, but it suggests that he is for sure seeing the valid word Zimbi, like zombie with an I. So that's going to play to the second S of Sickens for a very, very nice score for him to counteract that bingo.
Yeah, that's going to score 58 points with the Z on the double and then the second I on the double word square. So that's going to score almost as much as Sickens. The only main downside is it's going to open up the triple, the middle right triple, with a Z in that nice juicy spot for Jason to hit. And I'm actually not even sure if he can use it.
Yeah, that's my immediate response was that somehow with that nice mix of consonants and vowels that Jason just drew after his bingo, he somehow does not have he doesn't have a very easy play through that Z, but it looks like he has 1 6-letter word through that Z, which would be a very difficult find. I'm not sure I would find this word, Austin, but there is one word that Jason will have through this Z. So this is not an everyday word by any stretch. It looks like Jason is holding this play as well. He's already won a challenge earlier in this game, and he's going to go ahead and challenge Zimbies as well. This time, the word is going to come back valid, meaning that Samuel is going to get an extra 5 points for his effort here.
Yeah, I'm sure that Jason knows Zim because Z-I-M-B is also good. Z-I-M-B-I. I'm sure he is probably aware of it. It's just possible that he may not be sure if it takes an S. But yeah, because it scores 58, I'm sure it's definitely worth a challenge if he's not sure about it, and especially if he doesn't immediately see anything through this Z to hit the triple. And as you said, there's only one playable. Is it really just one playable move through the Z, which is not going to be easy to see. So he might be thinking that this could be a number of points going against him if he leaves this open next turn as well.
Yeah, I do expect that Jason will be able to at least play something parallel to the Z if he so chooses. There are a couple different options here. The board, he's got weird letters, right? The D, F, M combinations, not really very wieldy. He has an M that would potentially play underneath the I and S of Rorid and Sickens. If he can find something ending in M, ism is a word, so that would be a nice spot. He's got overlaps on top of the X. You could easily see him play something with fun and something like foam going across, or, things in that area, FOUD. And then, of course, playing alongside the Z has the potential to get him a bunch of points as well. As you can see, that Samuel has drawn pretty well after his play of Zimbies. So perhaps a comeback in the offing here.
Yes, and you can see that Jason's playing Doff. You didn't see the 6-letter word playing through the Z, which is Mazout. I don't know how you pronounce it. Mazout?
Yeah, Mazout, I guess. It was shouted out in our YouTube chat here. Very nicely spotted. Failing that, this play looks pretty solid to me, Austin.
He can still play Mazout on the next turn, actually, if he ends up seeing it again.
Great point. That would be a very Galaxy Brain setup right there. I would be astonished to see that because, of course, it makes a lot of sense to play it now while you can. But we are going to see a bingo here almost certainly, as Samuel has set up Relents, which plays on top of Ducks, forming Run and X. So definitely a big swing here, as after that slow start for Samuel, he has battled his way back into the lead.
Yes, especially that last turn at this stage, not costing him just yet. But yeah, this bingo here opens up the S in a nice juicy spot, and as we know, Jason has some big tiles on his rack, so something like Grays or something, score an easy 39 points onto that S. And we said we could still play Mazu or Mazout for 51. But yeah, this definitely gives Jason a few more options in terms of scoring on the next turn. And Samuel has drawn the first blank, it looks like, from the bag as well after that bingo.
Yeah, very nice series of draws here. And ooh, that W. Not that, I don't know, the BP combination is already going to be kind of tricky. Also, the board is not incredibly conducive to bingos at this point. You can imagine that after Jason plays through the S of Relents, it actually looks like the area that you could play 7 and 8 letter words is quite restricted. You can feel a little bit with relents. There's no hook to run to sort of allow you to play to that upper left part of the board. The V of Vager also cutting off a lot of space in tandem with the P of Payan. So the board is not great for playing bingos, but Sam is definitely going to be happy to have that blank in hand. And I'm curious, just Jason has a wealth of options here. If he plays something down to the S of Relents into that upper right corner, something like Grays, that is going to allow Sam to use the Z and play Zobo or something like that for a pretty solid score in response. So a lot hinging on this move for Jason here. As noted, he does have another shot at playing Mazout here, but that would be incredibly impressive to see played at any point of the game. I would expect him to play something like Grays, maybe Gutty through the T of Relents, but either way, that's going to give Sam an opportunity to hit that Z with an extension play and go up by even more.
Yep, exactly. And if Jason hasn't seen Mazout on the last two turns, it's almost certain that he probably won't see it here, which means that he's going to play through that S of Relents, or maybe through that T, as you said, with Gutty. And as you said, Samuel does have Zobo. He can also play, he also would leave something like WAP above Relents, the ELE, which would score a lot of points. So yeah, he's playing Grays here, keeping the U, scoring 39 here. So Samuel does have at least two good players in the next two turns with what he has, and then keeping the blank as well.
Yeah, great point, Austin. There is that other really nice scoring spot, on top of Relents, and this would be really interesting because you could have a 2-turn sequence here. If so, it looks like Samuel's getting ready to play Wob. That is a perfectly solid play on top of Relents. In this particular board position, it's very worth consideration to exchange that B out for the P on his rack. The reason being, by holding on to the B instead of the P, you would guarantee yourself at least a chance of playing Zobo for 45 on your next turn. So normally, for sure, playing the B over the P is the right choice. There was some merit to considering the other option here.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking too. And in this case, Jason doesn't. I mean, he could still play Mazout for a fourth time, but he has a much simpler Zoom in that same spot now. And I'm wondering if he has any playable bingos here. But Zoom might still be better anyway because it scores 45 points and keeps the blank. Also puts the M on the nice triple word square, which would be easier, or it's going to score a lot of points if he can bingo down from the M on the next turn with the letters that he has left, getting another 80 points. So it would be a nice kind of 1-2 punch, 45 points plus maybe another 80, which would be almost like 60 points each, basically, average on those two turns. So that's probably the reason why if you play something like Zoom, rather than any playable bingo here. I don't know if there are any playable bingos here.
So there are a couple. So a very tricky one from Jason's POV. If he's able to make his blank an F and hook onto IF on the board to make if and only if IFF, he could play Fumart. A very obscure word. But that, again, as you said, Austin, it's not even clear to me that that play is any better than just Zoom for the reasons that you stated. Placing that M out in space, if you can imagine the word Zoom on the board, that M is really useful to make high-scoring 8-letter bingos, which Jason has great chances of doing with that blank in hand. So Zoom looks like a perfectly solid play to me. Whether he saw Fumart or the other possible bingo here of Marabout through the B of Zimbies. I don't think that
Wow.
really matters because Zoom is a perfectly solid play for him.
Yeah, both bingos very difficult to see, and both of them will open up the T in the triple lanes. And yeah, it looks like Jason has picked out the V now. Doesn't really help him too much, I don't think. But yeah, it looks like Samuel is. What has he got lined up here? Oh, he's looking at Puja and Pau and Ob through that A of Grays for the top right.
That looks phenomenal for him. That looks great if he's able to play that with, and he has both players doing okay on the clock, but Samuel doing really well on the clock with 18 minutes to go. He could be reaching that point, especially because we know as players, Austin, when you have that blank on your rack, that has a tendency to drain your time. You have to think of so many different combinations and what your blank can be, iterate through the entire alphabet. Sometimes you have to look through all different spots on the board. The blank, as valuable as it is, can sometimes be the fastest way for your clock to drain. So seeing Samuel, play Puja to that A of Grays and continue to push Jason lower on the clock is something that could pay dividends later in the game.
Yep, definitely. And we can also see that Jason picked up the other blank. But the thing is, interestingly, is that Puja will also block Jason's bingo through the R of Grays. He has a voucher, I can't pronounce Aboutrer onto that R of Grays, which is not the easiest one to find, but according to Ziziva, it is a top 5,000 bingo. So I'm sure that Jason would have studied it at the very least, or if you ever look at it on Aerith or something, I'm sure he would find it straight away. But again, very difficult to see with a blank, and with a V and a U, you might not necessarily be thinking of playing or thinking about a bingo in this case. But Puja would block that bingo as well.
It's interesting because it looks like Samuel has clearly seen Puja. He had it lined up on his rack. Now he's considering a different play, which is going to score way fewer if he's going to play Hole through the E of Sickens or something like that. He may be considering doing that to try to leave more of the board open because he has that blank. And sorry for my pronunciation, I'll just say Joel. Let me not pretend like I know the pronunciations of anything. But Jole to the E of Sickens would score 11 fewer points than Puja, but it would leave the R open of Grays. Maybe he thinks he needs that on this tight board in order to get a bingo down with his blank. It would be a huge potential swing, Austin, as you mentioned, if Jason spots that tricky bingo on his rack.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like he's moving his tiles around again. But no, he's actually putting down Joel.
There we go.
Which, again, he said 11 points less. And to me, the leave of OPE blank, probably not as strong as EL blank, I guess. Maybe I should study my leaves a bit more. But I think that EL blank is probably stronger anyway. And even if it was around the same, I think that the 11-point difference here between Joel and Puja, I think I would just play Puja.
Yeah, just for the points. Consider also that, of course, with a blank in hand, Samuel wants to bingo, but he's also, kind of neck and neck here, right? Sacrificing too many points is not what you want either, because if neither player bingos for the rest of the game, which is very unlikely but not impossible, you still have to worry about how many points you're scoring, and sacrificing too many to go for that bingo can bite you as well. So it looks like he has quickly seen Impotent. Samuel has drawn that to the M of Zoom. He'll be able to play Impotent. I guess my question there is, that's a tricky word to know whether or not it takes an S, right? Which it does.
Oh.
Impotent. It feels like an adjective, but it actually happens to be a noun. So if Samuel goes ahead and plays Impotent on his next turn, which it seems like he very likely will, as Jason misses Avoutre, or whatever you would say. Again, I'm so sorry for my pronunciations. But this is going to create a potential enormous S hook if Jason is brave enough to use it. What do you think, Austin? Would you know the S hook on Impotent?
Well, I would not be 100% sure, and I'm sure a lot of people would not be 100% sure either, but he does have the probably safer play of Patentor onto the R of Grays, which at least
Oh,
wouldn't leave
yes.
an S hook, because playing Impotent and putting the S there is almost like a quackling nightmare where you'll just be hemorrhaging equity points every single move because you're not sure that it's a good word. And there's only one S left as well. We can see that both players have a blank. But he could play Impotent, and then now, if he does play that, then Jason would have something like Detours and Impotence as well. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see if Sam can actually find Patentor. I think that's really the play that's going to save him potential heartache, I guess.
For sure. Very big swing. And if he, as you say, if he misses it, it's going to hurt here. As long as Jason has the courage to try that S hook, which is not a given, I might add. But I think it says a lot about, we talk a lot about openness and closedness with respect to boards. Is this an open board? Is this a closed board? One good metric that you can see, as it looks like we are about to get some crazy content here, Austin. But just to finish my point, with such a good set of tiles as Samuel has, the fact that he only has 2 playable bingos on this move says a lot about the closedness of this board. There are so few tiles to play through, and what tiles there are very specific. The G and R of Grays are only terminal letters. You can't play through those letters. You have to end your word there, which is very difficult to do. So Impotent is the play, and now we get a really fun wait to see what Jason's going to do with this gigantic S hook here. Man,
All
this
right,
would be
let's
a
see.
gut check. I'm not sure. I like to think I would have the courage to play this, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that anyone would be playing this unless you would be sure of it, or if you need to play it to actually win the game. So this could actually end up staying there, unless someone is very far behind and has to play it.
Absolutely. You could see this being only a last resort when it is absolutely necessary, especially because Jason is, I think, pretty likely to see bingos to the R of Grays at the top of the board, such as Outrider or Rotunder, something in that spot to the R at the top. You have to be really sure that Impotent can pluralize with an S to get a potential 0 score here, as opposed to 70 odd points, which you're going to get by playing to the R of Grays. So this is a brutal situation. The clock is ticking. I think he's still doing okay on the clock. We're a pretty solid distance through this game. But this is a move where I could see myself sitting there in agony for quite a while before I pull the trigger on a play.
Yep, and as I said, this is basically like a quackling nightmare here, because you're just going to be losing lots of points every time you don't see it, don't play it. But it looks like he's playing Drusa onto the R of Grays, which again, if you take away Impotence, this is going to be one of the best players available. 70 points here, so it puts him back ahead by 14. And now I guess it really goes down to a race to the S, the final S that's in there, with the chance of playing Impotence. But it's quite possible that both players may not play the S here. Looks like Jason's talking to someone on the side here. I'm not sure what's happening.
Yeah, not sure what's going on there. But just to make it absolutely clear, a player of Jason's caliber is definitely in this rack. He's definitely seeing detours, right? Like that is a possible play that he could have made, hooking Impotence. The issue is not that Jason missed detours. It is completely that he was not sure of the S hook, which makes total sense to me. And it looks like Samuel is going to go ahead and challenge Detrusor as well. And that is going to get Jason an extra 5 points. So Samuel earlier in the game earned 5 points for Zimbies. and Jason's going to get that back right here with the Trusor. So we got to give him an extra 5 points on the scoreboard, which is not insignificant given how close the game is.
Yep, that now puts Jason up by 19 instead of 14. Just for additional thing here, Reductor would have been the highest scoring play at the top of the board there, putting the D on the triple letter square, extra
Yes.
4 points. But then again, it's quite possible that Samuel might not have challenged it, and then Jason would actually only be 18 ahead instead of 19 ahead. But in this turn, looks like Samuel has at least some options here at the top of the board. I think maybe Ceili, Ceili, and Id scoring 39 looks pretty good here. He's got other options like Illicit or Lectin if he wants to play slightly longer. And yeah, it really depends on what Jason might pick out here. There's not many playable spots or high scoring spots on the board now, so it might be a little bit of defense added to that. But you can see that Jason picked out 3 A's and 2 H's, which and it might not be that bad because he has the ish hook for IS underneath seconds, and he has the O of impotent on the right side with putting your H or the W there. So actually, in this case, having the H or the W here actually isn't too bad. And with the C of Ceili playing there, he also has the CH hook as well. So the H is actually pretty good.
The H does look like a really nice tile here, especially, if you can see the game unfold from here. Sam, without a bingo, he's going to play something like Illicit, like you described, Austin. Looks like he's going to have a wealth of options here. This late in the game, in Samuel's shoes, he's going to be looking to keep just the right combination of letters for next turn. So looking into the remaining tiles from his POV, you see it on the upper right of your screen. You can see that if he's able to play Illicit, leaving an N, or Ceili, however you would say that, leaving NT, those are both pretty good leaves because they're very unlikely to duplicate. In the case of the N, there's no more N's for him to draw. He can't draw a duplicated N, and there's only one more T he could draw. So either of those plays look quite good. Whereas normally you might be really eager to keep your E for next turn. There's certainly plays like Licit. You could hold off the E if you wanted to, but there's really no reason to hoard your E with so many more. There's 4 E's left to come in the bag, so you can worry a little less about needing to keep it for next turn with such good odds of redrawing one. So these little nuances between plays, should he play Ceili, should he play Illicit, Insight, Lectin, Licit, there's so many options up there, and finding just the right one could actually make a big difference.
Yeah, and to add even more variation is that we need to worry about the Q now, because there's actually no real good spaces for the Q. There's 1 Q and 1 U left. And maybe keeping an I in this situation might be good if a play with the QI becomes available. There isn't really a spot for it right now as it's. I mean, if you take away the D from the Drusa from the equation, there's not really many places with the Q. So if you play a longer word, you're more likely to pick up the Q, and maybe that might be something he's thinking of here, playing Klein. Again, clearing up the Q spot. There's no Q spots available now, and he keeps an eye on his rack.
That is really good analysis. I was not really thinking about that Q, and you can sort of quickly scan over the board and say to yourself, where would I play a Q? Where would I play the word chi if I had that word on my rack? And the answer is it's going to be pretty tough, if not impossible, to do so. So keeping the I in the chances of maybe you can figure out a way to play it. Maybe you can draw an A, and there you do see that Q.
There we go. Called it.
Wow. And okay, and we're going to see haha be played here. This word, I think, means some kind of a plant as opposed to just the laughter, which that you would think it would mean. But either way, that's a whopping 40 points in that spot. I wonder, though, is there any merit to trying to keep an H here with that other ish spot, right? Like you could potentially play wah, the crying sound, WAAH, and keep one of your two H's for next turn, potentially with a really big 1-2 punch there. And there we do see that last
Here we
S
go.
if Jason needs it. So there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, so yeah, Wild would have been a good play here to block the, well, make it at least a bit more difficult to play the Impotence hook. But now he has the S, he's actually slightly ahead. The other thing with Haha is that it would block off any potential players with Cat onto the T of Impotent. So I think Jason's taking a little bit of a gamble there, blocking that last spot for the Q, the easy spot for the Q. You basically really need a U now to be able to play something on there, or be sure of Impotence. So I mean, I think he just took the points and ran with it basically. But yeah, we're now going to be seeing if he actually needs to play off the ass. And in all fairness, he might not need to with Sam now holding the Q. He's going to be in a bit of trouble here. But he does have QIT on his rack. He could go and fish for the U for Quirt onto Rorid. That might be another option that he has now. And he could try and play off OF and Klein or something and see if he can, or Clift even, something like that.
Cliff
Which
is nice because it sets a it sets a QI spot. That could be interesting.
Yeah, so a few options here, but you're going to have to be kind of thinking a little bit further ahead in terms of how to get rid of the Q. And actually, as we can see from Simon's point of view, both of the remaining I's are on Jason's rack. So he's not going to be picking out an I anymore. So he's going to have to, I mean, he doesn't know that, but he's going to have to try and go for that U. I think Quirt might be the easiest thing to do, but playing Loft somewhere or Coft, maybe COFT. But I think he would probably go with Clift anyway, just based on what you can see. But he's doing off here. He's going to keep himself good on the scoreboard at least, and have two shots to try and pick up that U.
That would be, I mean, I wonder if it would be amazing if Samuel was confident this whole time in the S hook of Impotent, and he was playing that, expecting that Jason would not be confident of it. That would be an incredible sort of stroke of aggression on his part to set up an S hook that he expects himself to be a favorite to use. Unfortunately, with Jason having that S, that hope is not going to be realized here. So I do think that your suggestion, Austin, of trying to snag that last U and go for a really big Quirt play through that R of Rorid, the scary thing about that is that if he does play Quirt, it kind of activates Jason's willingness to pluralize Impotent, right? Like if he goes up by, if Samuel goes up by enough points, he almost forces Jason to try that S hook if he wants to win. So he needs to be kind of careful how much he goes up by. But either way, we can see that Samuel has not drawn the U that he needs just yet, but it's still lurking in the bag to give him some hope.
Yeah, definitely. And also the fact that Jason, I mean, unbeknownst to him, he can still see that the Q is still unchecked on his tile tracking sheet. He doesn't really have many places to play the Q either. He now has the Q of LOS, I guess, underneath of. But if that gets blocked, then he might need to play QIS at Impotence there as well if he can't get rid of it.
Yeah, that S does really unlock a lot of opportunities for him to play the Q if he were to draw it, that you just wouldn't really have without that S in hand. So Samuel is, learning that lesson right now. Without the S, the Q is proving extremely difficult to actually play. A lot is hinging for him on drawing that last U, whereas if Jason draws the Q, he's in much better shape with that S in hand. But I'm wondering, so I really feel like all the good plays here pluralize Impotent, but I don't expect that we're going to see that from Jason. I don't think he's going to take that risk with such a close game, realizing that if he's wrong, taking a 0 score here would be about the worst that he can do. So I don't know. It would be very surprising to me to see him try this S hook now. But is there any feeling that maybe it is dire enough if he can't find a good scoring play otherwise that he's going to go for it here, just feeling himself to be in more trouble than he is?
So to me, I don't think he should, because I think that the more tiles you play here, the more chance you're going to get the Q anyway. So he could play Wig, setting up the S for Swig, which is what he is doing right now, which actually also blocks the Quirt or Choir spot that Sam could have done in that same spot with Rorid. But it leaves Jason at least with a chance to actually just bingo, and hopefully, well, he actually doesn't draw so well there, because we can see there are lots of A's and E's left. So that doesn't really help him too much, but it gives him another way to potentially win the game. And Samuel can't really do anything there, and again, he can't get rid of the Q. So as it stands, it looks like he is basically stuck with it until something favorable happens on this board.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to see. I mean, I guess there is. Now there is a potential bailout, although it doesn't really excite me. But there are a couple of A's unseen to Samuel. We know that they're both on Jason's rack, but he could try to set himself up to play Cat and Twig. That's now possible with an A draw. Again, it's not actually possible in this situation. So, given that, it is very difficult to see how he's going to get that Q off his rack and onto the board.
Yeah, so the thing is that there's only 3 tiles left in the bag. And with, well, the thing that I could think of is to play something like Colt, Colt, and Oof, which does empty the bag, gives him as many shots as possible to pick up the S or the U. He can play Quit and Twig, or Quite even, which would score over 40 points, which, in this position would be potentially a game-winning play.
Beautiful suggestion. And we know if he does that, and he plays lot, that looks like a
You
bit
play Quite underneath it.
That's amazing.
Wow, that's amazing. You could play Quite underneath. Oh, you can't play Quite underneath, actually. Where there's no more vowels.
Right, I see. But
Quite,
man, so he hasn't committed this play yet. This would be if he's able to see that Colt forming Oof would be a bunch more points, which again, look at the score. He's trailing by 7. He needs every point he can get. Colt would score 18 points. Lot in this positioning would score only 9. So that really matters here. And it looks like he is switching his play over to get a bunch more points. And now it's not really clear to me what's going to happen when he draws that U from the bag.
Oh, wait. What's happening here? Because he could play Quilt through that L and making Lot as well if he plays Colt, which would score 31. That's another option that would be available if Quite and Twig get blocked.
Wow.
So this is a difficult play here. This is very pivotal.
Yeah, it is pivotal. It's going to definitely set him up for a really nice play, hooking Twig. I do think that Jason is going to sort of see that and block it if he can. And I'm not sure what the other backup plan is for the Q. But Samuel, again, he has not committed this play. You can see his timer still running. He may yet pick this up and try something else. But if I'm Jason, you got to do some bookkeeping. He has made the play. So Lot is Sam's play. He draws into a U for his Q, and he sets up an endgame now. Let's see. It's a 2-point margin. So here is the situation where if Jason needs to pull out that S hook now, he can do it, right? He can decide that blocking Twig is not good enough, and he can try to hook Impotence here if he thinks there's no other way to win. I think there's very likely to be ways that he can win by blocking the good Q spot, hooking Twig here. But man, this is tricky. It's worth noting also that Jason has a really good scoring play that doesn't necessarily hook Impotent and might even win the game. I'm not sure, but it would be Arene through the J and M of Zimbies, making jam, orb, lay, and that's it. The overlaps in that spot.
Wow.
That scores 35 points, leaving AIS. It's not
Yeah.
even clear that he would need the S hook on Impotent after that to win the game after Quite.
Wow. Yeah. So that's 35. Quite would be like 10 points more or so. 44, I think.
Yeah, let's play it
So,
out.
oh,
Oh,
is
is
this
he
counted?
getting it? Looks like he's found it. So if
Yeah.
he plays Arene and Sam responds with Quite, all he has to do, he'll only be down by 11 points and he'll hold AIS. So he should pretty easily be able to score that number of points without needing to risk the impotence hook. So that is
Yeah.
pretty huge here. It looks like he
What
spotted it.
he looks like he's going to play Arena instead, which then means he doesn't have an outplay with Impotence because you have EIS instead of AIS.
Right,
So
but
that's the slight
that might
nuance
not
there.
even matter. That might not even
Yeah.
matter to him because he just isn't willing to try that in either case. So
Yeah. I mean,
very
Samuel will keep
interesting.
EG. So any outplay for Jason in that spot would actually be enough.
Wow, great spot. Um, so it's ultimately that giant S hook is not going to be necessary for Jason, and it looks like he has spotted the play that's going to secure him a win without needing to risk it. Um, so wow, crazy end of this game down the stretch, Austin. I feel like if Samuel had gotten that U onto his rack, maybe one, certainly two turns earlier, but
Yeah.
you know, a little bit earlier, we might be in a different situation here. But he had to struggle through that queue for so long. Without it, this kind of a case study in why tournament Scrabble players are so anti-Q, right? It's such a hindrance on so many different types of boards in a way that very few other tiles are so consistently. So if you're a newer Scrabble player and you're saying, well, the Q score is 10, it's got to be really good. Well, as you continue your journey into more and more experience as a Scrabble player, you're going to start to experience things like this where the Q just gets in the way and really costs you the game.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, sometimes like this, where I kind of mentioned it with the queue, when Klein was being played, I could see something happening at that point. There's like arenas being played. And yeah, I mean, even the slight nuance of playing Colt or Lot, that might have been a factor in this turn because instead of being 11 points ahead after, well, I think after Quite, which is what Samuel would play next, um, Samuel would actually be 20 points ahead and keeping EG, and IES might not score quite enough points to win the game. So something like that, if he played Colt, might have changed the decision making of Arena on this turn. So even something it was just so close.
Yeah, so definitely the right play here by Samuel to play off his cue for 44 points. Well done by him to spot the possibility of being able to play his cue when it seemed kind of like a threat that maybe he wouldn't be able to at all. But he's only up by 11 points, and there are definitely simple outplays that Jason can make that will score more than that without needing to risk the hook. So very nicely done by Jason here. Of course, he's going to be disappointed to learn that Impotent does take an S, but frankly, in his shoes, I would have been mortified to try that hook unless I absolutely had to, and he showed that he did not have to in order to secure the win.
Yeah, and what you'll be at the end more mortified if you play it and it's not a word. You look like a
Absolutely.
fool.
Yes.
But yeah, Weirs has come down, the highest scoring outplay possible here. So that's 18 points. So it looks like,
18.
yeah, Jason wins by 13 points in the end.
Man, that was pretty impressive. What a game. And this, again, between two players who are not among the absolute top seeds in this field. For anybody coming over from my latest YouTube video, Adam Logan, the star of the show, the top seeded player in the field, is coming up next in our next game here. But this was an incredible game that just shows that the depth of this field is really impressive.